Hi, it's Anne Marie with AM Astro. Excuse my hair, it's a bit messy. Um, so, after Trump has had these two disastrous interviews or rallies or public speaking events, we'll just call it that, I thought I would readdress his 12th harmonic charts for the current period. And I know I did a video on these previously, and I was kind of joking through it all, just saying, what I wanted to see. So we'll try to be a little more succinct and not just try to look at what I want to see. So this is August 15th, and he has a Gemini sun at 22:55, and so we've moved it from Gemini. His birthday's in June, to Cancer for July, and now to Leo for August. And I set it for when it reaches 22:55, the same degree as his natal sun, except moved 2 signs because it's 2 months after his birthday. So looking at this chart, which I believe I did in the previous video, it's a nocturnal chart. Both luminaries are below the horizon. The moon is the ruling luminary because it's a nocturnal chart. And the sect is determined on where the sun is, and the sun is below the horizon, so it's a nocturnal chart. The moon also rules Cancer, so it represents his health and vitality in this chart. It represents him. The moon represents him in this chart. Coincidentally, his solar return for this year also has a Cancer rising. So this moon is not happy in Sagittarius, and it's in the 6th house of ill health, hard work, subordination, but mostly illness, or at least that's the way I'm looking at it. So the moon is in Sagittarius, so it's ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's in the 12th house of hospitals and prisons, behind the scenes, being taken away from, like, stepping away, being not in the public, being imprisoned. And it's conjunct Mars. And what this is leading up to is the square to Saturn, the Jupiter square Saturn from the Great Conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius in December of 2020. When Jupiter and Saturn came together at 0 Aquarius, that marks the next 20 years. That's the Great Conjunction. And this is the first aspect, the first harsh aspect, a square, to that. So it points back to that 2020 conjunction. And there will be 3 of these hits. This one will be exact on August 19th, which is the day of the Democratic convention. But this is when Mars has just separated from Jupiter, and Mars is applying to that square with Saturn. But I'm just looking at Jupiter right now. I'm getting ahead of myself. Jupiter rules the 6th house of illness, and the moon is within that house, reporting to Jupiter. Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, and in his natal chart, Jupiter rules the 8th house, which I keep going on and on about because the 8th house is the house of anxiety and death. So this seems significant. The moon has already opposed these. It's separating from the opposition to these, but it's in the house that is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter in this chart rules not only the 6th house, but also the 10th house of his reputation and his public presentation. But because it's in the 12th house, this Jupiter is not happy. And because it's a nocturnal chart, Jupiter can't be as positive as it wants to be. So in a nocturnal chart, Saturn is the malefic out of sect. And so Saturn is more difficult. And Saturn is right on top of his midheaven. So when planets are angular, especially conjunct the angle, that gives them more emphasis. So this malefic planet, with Mars as the other malefic, applying to a square, which is a harsh angle, a harsh aspect, and then with Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, applying to that square, which is in fact on the angle, it's squaring the angle, representing this house of illness. This is when something's going to happen. The other things that are happening, Venus is applying to the opposition to Saturn. So that's pulling in his natal chart. He has Venus and Saturn conjunct, depending on what house system you use in the 12th house. So this is an interesting application as well. This Mercury is right on his ascendant and it's retrograde and it's under the beams of the sun. And Pluto, of course, is right on the cusp of his 8th house. So this looks like something serious is going to happen. This is what would be an exit visa. You would just say, this is an exit visa. This is an opportunity that his soul has to exit stage left. So if we look at, whoops, that's not the right one. If we look at the next month, September, same thing, we've moved the sun to 2255 Virgo. And again, it's a nocturnal chart, but the moon is setting, but the sun rules the chart. So it's here, it's moving into the 3rd house. So I remember looking at this one before and not really, because it's a nocturnal, then Saturn is the malefic out of sect and it's in the 8th house. The square has separated. So it's already happened and it's separated and Jupiter has moved on. And these are, Mars is within the 5-degree orb of the 12th house. So I would consider Mars in the 12th house. And Mars is ruling the midheaven. So we're still looking at a confinement of some sort. The sun has now passed the opposition to Saturn. And because it's leaving the 2nd house into the 3rd, this could be, I don't know, finances. The 2nd house is those that support you, and the sun is leaving that house. So, because the sun, so it's leaving the support, and going into the 3rd house of lessons to be learned, local travel, community. It's also, no, that doesn't apply. So there's not a lot jumping out in this chart. There's not a lot of angularity. The moon is the only angular planet, and the moon represents the 12th house of imprisonment. So that's the biggest thing with Mars on the cusp. So to me, that says that he could, and then with Saturn on in the 8th house and being the malefic out of sect, this could be, he could be in the hospital. He could be confined to some extent. Looking at October 15th, which moves the sun to 22 Libra. Now the sun is in the 8th house. This chart is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in the 1st house. It's a day chart now. So Mars is the malefic out of sect, and Mars is in the 6th house of illness, with the sun in the 8th house of death. And let's see, is there any connection to these? Not from Saturn. The moon, no. But the moon is at 29 degrees of Pisces, the end of the zodiac. getting ready to go into Aries, getting ready to change signs and change houses from the first house of identity to the second house of resources. And so then the moon it's separating from a trine to Mars. And when it gets into Aries, what is its next aspect? That moon's not doing anything. So in Aries, the next aspect will be the square to Mars before it does the opposition to the sun, because it's not communicating with either of these planets in Aries. Wow. So, and then with Pluto back into Capricorn at 29 degrees, going direct now in the 12th house. This is a sextile. Okay, so it's applying to that sextile, but that's a modern planet, so it's not counting in my. But that is interesting that there's that sextile. This is still confinement. Where's Jupiter? On going into the 5th house. So as far as angular planets, the moon doesn't count. Saturn is the only angular planet, and it's so far away from the ascendant that it doesn't have a lot of strength there. Jupiter isn't, because it's in the 5th house. Venus, it's out of range. So there's nothing angular here other than Saturn. And like I said, it's so far away from the angle. So this doesn't feel very active to me either. And then if we go into the election month, this is after the election. But I think we're all in agreement that we're not going to know the results of the election right away. There's going to be all sorts of shenanigans. So in this chart, what is interesting is, okay, so the sun is still in the 8th house, 2255 Scorpio now. It's in Aries rising, so Mars is his vitality, and it's in the 5th. Agents. It's a day chart, so Mars is the greater malefic, or the malefic out of sect, in the 5th house. And look at this. What is that? That's a quincunx. Meh. Venus is squaring the nodes. Look at that. And Venus is right on top of the midheaven. So what does Venus rule in this chart? Venus rules the 7th house of opponents, partnerships, and the 2nd house of resources. It's in this hidden aspect to Mars, the ruler of the chart. That kind of feels like Kamala to me, ruling the opponent, and she's coming out on top. So this might be where he has to accept that. He's got Saturn in the 12th. If he's even still in it. Because that August 15th chart, this chart, just feels very, very much like something big happens. So anyway, let me know what you think, and we will see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.